A week after Newcastle's CEO admitted the club could have to sell to comply with financial regulations, are we seeing the start of a Newcastle exodus? Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. Dharmesh Chef and Mark McAdam here tonight. Kieran Trippier, Callum Wilson and Miggy Almiron all in demand. The latest from Newcastle on the way. Plus, we'll hear from the Chelsea head coach, Mauricio Pochettino, on the future of Armando Broja. Two games currently taking place in the Africa Cup of Nations. Equatorial Guinea take on Ivory Coast. That's on Sky Sports Premier League. The hosts must win to guarantee avoiding an early exit. And over on Sky Sports Football, it's Guinea-Bissau against Nigeria's Super Eagles, who know a draw will be enough to get them into the last 60. Right, feels like it's an interesting time at Newcastle. Let's start then. Mark, Kieran Trippier, what's going on?
Yeah, fascinating time at the moment for Newcastle fans. They'll be waking up this morning seeing constant speculation with different members of their playing squad, and they'll be thinking, what next? Not him. We don't want to lose players. We want to bring players into the football club. Kieran Trippier, 81 appearances since he joined in January 2021. He was Eddie Howe's first signing, an instrumental part of the success story over the last couple of years. But we know that he is on the shopping list of Bayern Munich. They're looking to recruit a right-back in this window, and Kieran Trippier ticks the majority of their boxes, although there are some members of the backroom team who are not convinced that Trippier is the right man, but Thomas Tuchel wants Kieran Trippier. We understand from our colleagues, Sky in Germany, that Newcastle will be looking for around £12 million for the 33-year-old. However, this is a very difficult deal to get done, A, because Newcastle don't want to sell, despite the fact that we're being told that Kieran Trippier would be open to potentially linking up with Bayern Munich, and two familiar faces in Eric Dyer and Harry Kane. And this would be an opportunity that he sees as something that might never come along again. This is Bayern Munich, one of the biggest clubs in world football, who are going really well in the Bundesliga, although they're second at the moment, looking to get to the latter stages of the Champions League as well. We know that Kieran Trippier trained today, so he's still very much in the mix for playing this coming weekend. We know that he is a big part of what Eddie Howe has achieved, and obviously Eddie Howe will want Kieran Trippier to stay at the club for many years to come. But as you touched upon right at the top of the show, sometimes these decisions surrounding Newcastle at the moment won't just be about football-based decisions, because we know that financially things are very tight in the northeast. Yeah,
I want to get into that in just a moment. But before we do, let's talk Callum Wilson, Dharmesh. Is he another who could be on the move?
It looks like he's in demand at the moment, Mike. Atletico Madrid thought to have made an approach to Newcastle United over Callum Wilson. We're told that that approach was rejected, a loan move for Callum Wilson. You can see him not training with the rest of the first-team squad today. He was training away from the first-team squad because he's recovering from injury. Just on his contract situation, though, that's what makes this one quite interesting. He's 31 years old, and he's entered the final 18 months of his contract. So I just wonder whether that kind of situation might make Newcastle have to look at certain deals when maybe if everything was fine, and I know we're going to touch on it with regard to their finances, whether they'd have to do that if that case wasn't there.
OK, as I say, I want to get to the finances, but before we do, Miggy Almiron, Mark, is he another who could be going on the exit door?
Yeah, another one of those players that's been linked with a potential move away from Newcastle United. He's 30 in February this year, so he's getting on a bit when you look at footballers these days. He signed a new 3.5-year contract in February 2023, so they tried to tie him down to a longer-term deal. So in this situation, Newcastle United hold all the cards. We know that there has been a link with Al-Shabaab at the moment, but there are mixed reports that we're receiving with regards to how formal that offer is. However, we do understand that there is a dialogue between Newcastle United and Al-Shabaab. He joined in 2019, in January, funny enough. He was a January transfer signing under the Mike Ashley era. So again, he would be another player that potentially could generate a decent sum for Eddie Howe and the backroom team to reinvest in new players. However, he's been a big part of the success story. We know he had that big purple patch just before he signed his new contract. He's a versatile player that can play on the left or the right. He's a real fan's favourite as well, very popular. But again, it goes back down to that business decision. Is this a player that actually could generate some more funds that we could then reinvest into the squad?
Right. OK, let's talk finances then. There are people watching this who are going, hang on. Newcastle are the richest club in the world. Their owners are worth £700+ billion. Put that into context. Manchester City owners worth 20-odd billion pounds. That's the difference. Why are they going to have to sell before they can buy, Darmesh?
I'm sure Newcastle fans will ask that, and the answer is simple. Just because you have owners who have multi-billions of pounds, it doesn't necessarily equate to that they can simply go out into a transfer window and spend £1 billion, for argument's sake, because the profitability and sustainability rules are there. Now, in layman's terms, if I was to explain this, how it would work, basically, it's done over a rolling 3-year period. Now, in a rolling 3-year period, a club is not allowed to make losses of more than £105 million over those 3 years. Now, 18 of the clubs are currently operating within the parameters of profitability and sustainability.
And they're one of them, aren't they?
Newcastle United are one of them.
So where's the problem?
However, if, as we've been hearing from their chief executive, that they might have to sell before they bring players in, do we read in between the lines and maybe say, well, is this year's part of the rolling 3-year cycle, meaning that they are sailing a little bit close to the wind with regard to PSR? If you go back to the 18 clubs who are operating within it, that 3-year period is 22-23, 21-22, 20-21. Now, the next year is this season, 2023 to 2024. Now, if you incorporate those 3 years that the next PSR rulings will be made under, they effectively cover the ownership of Newcastle United. They came in October 2021. So that's 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24. Now, if they are sailing close to the wind with regard to those rules, then they might have to make sales and big sales before July the 1st, when the new budget year and the new accounting year comes around. So if you read in between the lines, why are Newcastle United having to sell without being privy to exactly what their finances are, you would assume a little bit that maybe, just maybe, they are just sailing close to the wind with regard to those rules.
Mark, reading between the lines, as Darmesh said, does that mean Mike Ashley did a good job?
Yeah, he wasn't a very popular figure in the North East because of the way he ran the football club. He didn't invest as much money into players as they would have liked, the infrastructure, and to try and push that football club on. However, as Darmesh has alluded to with regards to the dates, the final period of the current 3-year cycle was the last of the Mike Ashley era, where he was very sensible, didn't spend a lot of money, kept things very close to his chest and ran a very tight ship. So therefore, they're actually having the benefits of that year in this current cycle. In their last and most recent set of accounts, it was confirmed that Newcastle United are losing around £200,000 a day. The new owners have invested. However, they've invested to the point where they can before they fall foul of PSR. So this is where it all gets very complicated. The other thing to point out as well is that this is not new. Selling players and regenerating that money and reinvesting is something that all the football clubs do. And Chelsea have done it. Manchester City do it very well. So Newcastle fans shouldn't be looking at this situation and thinking, we're losing all our best players. If it's done sensibly and sustainably and with a wise head, this could be something that could be really good for the football club. The problem they've got is that some of these players that they're looking to potentially offload, 29, 33, into the 30s, this becomes a difficult thing to do because the money isn't going to be there at the top level. So therefore, for example, we know that, according to our colleagues, Sky in Germany, the Kieran Trippier asking price is £12 million. They obviously then have to look at the book price. What does that mean they'll get in terms of what they can reinvest? And it might not be very much money. So when you go out and try and find an experienced right-back for, say, £8 million, they're going to struggle.
The other element to look at this is the chief executive has actually said we might need to sell. That's public. That's out there in the public. Now, if you're an owner of a football club who wants to buy a Newcastle United player, knowing that maybe they might have to sell some of their big players. Are you going to go in there and say, oh, I know what, we'll pay you over the odds for this player? No, because you might be in a position to say, we might be able to get a really, really good deal for a really, really good player here. So with the Almiron situation, if maybe they could get a deal done there, because it's the Saudi Pro League, we know that there might be a deal that could be done there whereby Newcastle United could maybe get more than they would get for Almiron if they were trying to sell him maybe in the European or the Premier League market. Very interesting situation, and it's obvious that before June the 30th, there's going to be some ins and outs there at the club.
Yeah. It feels like everyone's circling. It
Yeah.
feels like there's a lot of noise and teams are seeing this as their opportunity. Much the same as those sides that get relegated from the Premier League. Other Premier League sides go, well, hang on, who can we cherry pick there that could be a good deal because we know they need the money because of the finances that happen when you get relegated.
Exactly. What did Eddie Howe say? They haven't got many friends at the moment. All right, let's leave Newcastle. Let's talk Calvin Phillips. Any update on him, Dharmesh?
Just a slight development today. I was told by one source that West Ham United are hopeful that they can still finalise a deal that would take Calvin Phillips from Manchester City to West Ham United. What's under discussion at the moment between the two clubs, we understand, is the conditions of this loan, and that would incorporate a loan fee and also, probably more importantly, how his big wages at Manchester City are going to be apportioned. So that's where we stand at the moment. I think West Ham United are very well aware that there is a lot of interest in this player as well. We know that Crystal Palace have been pretty public through Roy Hodgson, displaying their interest in the player. Newcastle United, they've held an interest in the player as well. I just wonder whether these latest developments with potential sales might have an impact on Newcastle. There's a few foreign clubs as well out in European football, the likes of Atletico Madrid, who are thought to be interested in Calvin Phillips too. But it just seems now that maybe West Ham United think, you know what, there's a potential that we could do this deal. And it could be a good move for everyone, because you get Calvin Phillips off the books at Manchester City, and if, say, for example, West Ham United need a little bit of help with the wages, at least City get some of those wages off the books anyway. And you get Calvin Phillips, who's likely to get more first-team football than he is at Manchester City, not only in the Premier League with a club, you know, in and around the top six, but also a club that's in the last 16 of the Europa League as well.
Yeah, we'll keep a close eye on Calvin. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we're going to ask the question, have Manchester United made their best signing in years? Plus, news from Chelsea and Tottenham as well. See you in a moment. So, Manchester United appointed the City Football Group Chief Football Operations Officer Omar Barada as their new Chief Executive. Dharmesh, I mentioned it after the break. I'm going to ask you the same question. Is he the most significant signing that United have made in a long time?
It's certainly starting to feel that way at this stage, only because we've only seen Ineos come in very, very recently, and we're still waiting for their official minority investment to be officially ratified. But make no mistake about it, they were the driving force behind convincing Omar Barada to swap Manchester City for Manchester United. Now, there's no official date yet as to when Omar Barada will be starting his role at Manchester United. However, it is understood that he will be kept informed about every recruitment position within the administration at Manchester United that Ineos and Manchester United will be making. Rather like Manchester United's minority investors, Ineos, being kept across everything that happened at Manchester United with regard to the recruitment during January, be it players, be it coaching staff, be it anything. So that's the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. And I think you mentioned the title there, that he's moved from City to Manchester United. It is viewed as a step up with regard to position. I know people will argue, is it a step up regard to the football club? Manchester City will always argue they're well ahead of United on every single metric. But the fact of the matter is, he was the chief operating officer of the City Football Group. He's now the chief executive officer of Manchester United, full stop. So that's one way to look at it, and you could say, big move, big coup. Now, when this was announced, there was a lot of noise on social media. What happens with regard to Manchester City and these 115 charges that are hanging over the club? You would have to think that Manchester United would have done a lot of due diligence on this move before they appointed Omar Barada and before taking him from Manchester City to Manchester United. But I think it is another example of these two gentlemen here and Ineos making a top-down approach in how they are recruiting at Manchester United. They're not going and saying, right, we need to recruit players here in this position, etc. We need to get this structure right. And at the top of that structure is Omar Barada now.
Yeah.
Then they're going to work on sporting director. That appears to be the next kind of move that they need to make at Manchester United. And Omar Barada will be consulted alongside Ineos when they make that decision.
It feels like this is a really sensible appointment. It feels like they've gone out and got who they see as the best in the business. Now, Mike, I guess I want to pose the question to you because you understand Manchester City. You followed that team closely for a number of years now, and you understand the inner workings of how things operate behind the scenes and the infrastructure. How will Man City view this appointment?
I ask the questions on this show. But actually, it's a good point. City are really relaxed about their structure. They have a fabulous structure. They have a part in 13 clubs around the world, and they view themselves as best in class in the world. But don't be fooled. This guy is good. Omar Barada is a smart operator. He knows the inner workings of Manchester City, and he's been involved in transfers like the Erling Haaland transfer to Manchester City. Barada was involved, very much involved. So City are relaxed. They wish him well. They're very comfortable in their situation. But personally, it's a coup for Manchester United. He's a good operator, and he's been involved with the best club in the world. He knows the inner workings of the best club in the world, and I have no doubt he will improve Manchester United.
Yeah, the way to look at it is, yes, Manchester City will always say, as you mentioned, they're best in class. We've got the best structure, the best administration. Look at all the clubs we've got. Look at the position we're in the Premier League in the past few years, in European football as well. But if you were to have asked them a month ago, would you like to see Omar Barada leave for Manchester United? I don't think the answer is going to be yes.
I'm sure it wasn't. Can I carry on now, Mark?
Sorry, carry on.
Thanks.
Carry on.
Now, Mauricio Pochettino spoke to the media today before Chelsea's Carabao Cup semi-final second leg against Middlesbrough, which is tomorrow. As ever, transfers were a big part of the news conference, but Pochettino didn't want to give much away, particularly when asked about Armando Broja.
At the moment, no news. The moment is we cannot update in any way. I think it's also quiet, and I think it's a good thing because we are working really well, and we're not surprised at the moment.
Will you make any signings this month?
No update. We cannot update nothing because it's, I think, in the same direction and the same way. You know that you asked me about players that maybe can leave. It's no news about players that can come in.
That was an Argentinian straight back, Mark, but he didn't come out and say, no, Broja isn't going anywhere. He could have done. Why do you think he didn't?
Well, let's be honest, Chelsea's a big football club, and as we've seen over the course of the last few transfer windows, decisions get made with regards to finance. And Armando Broja, being a player that's come through the Chelsea Academy, will obviously generate 100% worth of profit if he were to be sold. Therefore, a lot of the decisions, particularly like Conor Gallagher, who, again, Chelsea fans wouldn't want to see depart, if he were to be sold in this window, it would be more money to reinvest. So therefore, Armando falls into that category. Now, he may be a player that Mauricio wants to try and keep. However, it might be a financial decision that affects what happens to him. He's very coy on the situation. Ultimately, every player has their price. It just depends whether someone can meet what Chelsea value him at, which we understand to be between 30 and 40 million pounds, which is still significant, but he's only young and has a lot of potential. We know he can score goals. He did it in the Premier League with Southampton. But yeah, one to keep an eye on.
He can't say anything else in a news conference either. Yeah. Especially if he gets asked a question, as Mark mentioned there, about Conor Gallagher the whole time. As much as he'd say, yeah, I want to keep him, he's my captain, he plays all the time, decisions like recruitment will probably be taken out of Mauricio Pochettino's hands. He will have an input on it, of course, but we mentioned it before, the PSR could dictate a lot of things that happen at Chelsea still.
Yeah. All right, listen, we're running out of time, as we always do on this programme. Let's run through a couple. Staying with Chelsea, they've recalled someone today. Darmish, who's that?
Yeah, the Portugal under-21 forward, Diego Moreira. He signed in the summer from Benfica and he went on loan to Lyon. No goals in 7 appearances, so he has been recalled by Chelsea. He can't actually go on loan to another team, though. That's because right at the start of the season, he played 45 minutes for Chelsea in the EFL Cup. That's why Mauricio Pochettino will have a look at him and see if he can play a role for Chelsea for the rest of the season. Rules state that you can be registered for 3 different clubs in a season, but you can only play for 2. So he's already played for Chelsea, he's already played for Lyon, won't be able to play for anyone else.
Right, I'm putting you boys on the clock. Darmish, Emerson Royale, you've got 15 seconds.
Yeah, the Saudi club Al Nassr are interested in signing him. We think that Tottenham have rejected that approach, and he has been pretty useful for Ange Postecoglou so far this season with all the injuries that he's had, a backup to Pedro Porro and even deputised in central defence as well. OK, nicely done. Another fullback for you, Mark, Nico Williams.
Yeah, at Nottingham Forest, they have rejected an approach from Feyenoord. He has 2.5 years on his contract. Played a little bit under Nuno. But yeah, Nottingham Forest, under pressure financially, not interested in letting Nico Williams go yet.
Leeds in 10 seconds. Can you do it?
Yeah, they're hopeful and confident they can tie up Wilfried Gnonto with a new deal.
5 seconds. Brilliant. Boys are back at 7 for much more on the Transfer Show. Sky Sports News with the rest of the sport coming next. We'll see you in just a moment.